You're welcome to the world now. The United States is reeling after the shocking assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a key figure in President Donald Trump's youth movement. Authorities say a suspect has been arrested in Utah following a nationwide manhunt sparked by surveillance images. Kirk's widow, Erica, has broken her silence, vowing to carry on her husband's legacy.
The assassination of Charlie Kirk has sent shockwaves across the United States. The 31-year-old right-wing commentator and founder of Turning Point USA was shot dead while addressing students at Utah Valley University on Wednesday. Mr. Kirk was answering a question about gun violence when a single bullet struck him from a rooftop nearby. For nearly 2 days, investigators struggled for leads, until a break in the case came on Friday. Authorities released surveillance images of a man near the scene. The man was later identified as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, after his own father recognized him in the pictures and told him to surrender.
We got him. I want to thank the public who has been so engaged, reviewing videos, helping us with sending in tips, and helping us get to this point. I want to thank the family members of Tyler Robinson who did the right thing in this case and were able to bring him into to law enforcement as well.
Investigators say they found the bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel, ammunition engraved with anti-fascist messages, and online messages discussing the weapon. A motive has not yet been disclosed. On Friday, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, spoke for the first time, mourning her husband, but promising to continue his life's mission.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
Mr. Kirk was a polarizing figure, praised by allies for mobilizing young conservatives and criticized by opponents for his hardline views on social issues. But even critics admired his willingness to debate. As the nation processes another politically motivated killing, leaders are once again asking, how does America stop the violence before it consumes the country?
Let's talk further. This global affairs analyst, Kunle Falowo, joins me to discuss in details about the death of Charlie Kirk. Now, you heard the wife say this will not end, the ongoing conversations will not end. What's your take on all of this development, especially looking at gun runners in the U.S.?
Thanks for having me. So this is very sad in the life of the American experiment. Far too much we've been witnessing a lot of gun violence, particularly school shootings. This year alone, from January 2025 to August, it's been over 285 shootings, and that's not to count the gun-related violence that's been happening across board. So this is an existential crisis in America, and it calls for politicians on the right and the left to come together and prefer a lasting and a sensible solution without necessarily infringing upon the Second Amendment, as most Americans would love to have their guns, but it just only makes sense now to have common sense gun laws overall. In the U.S., there are gun laws, and Americans have a right to own a weapon. But like we have mentioned, there have been school shooting over the past months, and this now happens. What kind of solution will the U.S. government, or should the U.S. government put in place to end these kinds of situations? So first of all, it's important to note that each individual state have their state legislators that run the affairs of the state, and they come up with laws and regulations that guide each state. For example, in Utah, Utah State has the least restrictive gun laws, meaning that you don't need a license to own a gun or to own and load a rifle. You can carry a loaded rifle wherever and whenever. You don't necessarily have to go through a background check to get a gun, and and this is in Utah. So for anything to change, first of all, the state legislators, first of all, uh, the individuals, the residents of the state will have to start to, you know, put a lot of pressure on their state legislators to write laws that would maybe give room for universal background check to ensure that anyone that wants to purchase a firearm, we're not saying you shouldn't get one, but there should be some way to do some or conduct some background check. This is only one of those sensible things uh, that needs to be done. And again, that's not to say that the Second Amendment has to be taken away, but it's just essential that we have regulations that guide against owning guns. Some people want to argue that it's the individual that carries out some of this atrocities, not the gun itself. Debatable, but then again, we have to be aware that just being able to have access to a gun at any time or without any regulations, it's very problematic at this point.
Does this show that the violence in the U.S. regarding all of this is on the increase at every point or at this time?
Most definitely. Like you said before, gun-related violence is increasing. There's a lot of school shootings this year alone. In Minnesota, a high-ranking member of the House representative member from the Democratic side was shot dead with her husband in the home. It's a lot of issues, gun-related atrocities, and some form of politically motivated ones also. And not too long ago, we had some individual that attempted an assassination attempt on President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been going on for far too long, and it just makes sense for all politicians, because not only is that important for them, it's also important for their constituents and every other American everywhere, because apparently no one is safe. So it only makes sense now to really put the partisanship, bipartisanship, and try and come together and really make a good sense out of it, because it's going to continue to happen if sensible gun laws are not put in place.
So, looking at the fact that Charlie Kirk was always talking about conservative values, do you see this as politically motivated?
Well, as we know, investigation is still ongoing.
True.
The motive for the assassination has not been clearly identified, I would say. So it's very too early to kind of jump into conclusion, but based on readings of what's in the social media news generally, we see that this individual has some political leanings, but we're not very sure. But one thing I also wanted to point out is America is a very polarized society. There's a lot of far cries from the left and from the right, and everybody is at each other's throats, but that's not going to solve the problem. It's an internal problem. It's an internal crisis that needs to be tackled together and for the betterment of the entire populace, not just on the right side or on the left side.
Okay, so this has happened in Utah, state of Utah. President Donald Trump was on a campaign in Pennsylvania and he was shot at. Now, we are not also talking about, or we've not even mentioned the pockets of shootings in different schools in the U.S. What can the different states, how can they come together? What can they do to ensure that there is a holistic solution, especially when it comes to the security apparatus in schools, in playgrounds, in shopping malls, everywhere?
It's important to, one of the major crises that we're also looking at, and a lot of people have encountered, which is legitimately so, is the fact that mental health needs to be really looked at. It's some of these foundational identifiers are important for national discourse. We need to start really talking about all of these things and how they culminate and play a larger role. For example, social media. There's so many things out there in the social media space that like some individuals will go in there and consume without really kind of making some additional researches. So it's important to have people monitor the social media spaces, which some institutions of learning have been, exploring. And also, it's important for family members to look out for their words for their child. This individual we're talking about, who, apparently did what he did in Utah. He's just 22-year old, and unfortunately, he had done this, and you can only imagine what has been happening in his mind for him to, for all of that to culminate to making this decision that he had made. So it's important that family units and friends and institutions and every facet of the society, every major institutions really come together to look at this holistically and identify some of those problems on time, nip it in the bud before it completely escalates. Because if it does, we're just going to continue to mourn people. And I would also mention that also in the social media space, it is very crucial for every individual who's coming out to say something, to mention something, or to advocate for anything, to remember that you're dealing with a lot of people's lives. Your words, your actions do matter, and it's very important that we don't take it lightly.
Global Affairs Analyst Kunle Falowo, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.